Without further ado, I'd like to give it up to CeCe and Andrew to talk about sales training. Thank you.
I wish I was having that kind of hair day tonight.
How about you, Andrew?
You too, right?
I'm feeling pretty good about it. I don't know where co-director came from, because it's just me. Anyway.
Thing on LinkedIn. You gotta update that, man.
Yes, I do. There never was a co-director. I gotta fix that. By my own fault. Good to see you guys all this evening. CeCe and I are going to talk to you about sales training and the way that we've tackled it from two different points of view. I've been at HubSpot now for 6.5 years. When I joined, there was about 60 people in the company. My job was to basically create the program to scale the sales operation. At that time, we had probably 12 salespeople on staff, and we were really starting to hire about 3 a month, every month. And now we're at the cadence where we probably would bring on between 12 and 20 salespeople a month at this stage of the game, globally. And I've been involved in the evolution of that program the entire way through. For the first 2 years, it was just me running that sales training and scaling program. Then I started to add people into the team, and now I've got 13 people in my organization that runs the L&D operation for all the customer-facing jobs at HubSpot, as well as management leadership development. So I can look at the problem of how do you scale sales behaviors from that vantage point, and then CeCe has a different angle that she takes from it.
So hi everyone, super excited to be here tonight. So everyone knows HubSpot. You guys got that big orange thing going on in Boston. How many of you here are familiar with OpenView? Okay, some. I like to see that. Good hands. So I'll give you kind of the quick and dirty on OpenView, who we are, what we do, and then tell you a little bit about my role. So OpenView at our core, we're a venture capital firm. So love hearing about some of the privately funded companies, but we are investing in B2B, exclusively B2B SaaS companies at the expansion stage of growth. So for us, that's 2 to 20 million in revenue. And what we figured out is when you're investing in a company at that stage, there's 2 specific things that those companies need help with. Getting more talent. So if you're in a B2B company, getting more talent, is that a focal point for you? Yes? Okay, good. And nods. And getting more customers. So I work on the get more customer side of OpenView's consulting arm, and I work with our portfolio companies in order to help them build out and optimize their BDR, SDR, and inside sales teams. So sometimes for me that means going on site with a company, learning about what their team is doing, how it's working, how it's not working, and make recommendations around the processes that they need to put in place and training that they need to have. And in other cases, what we'll do, as you know, these teams need a lot of love and attention, and we'll actually take them in-house. So if our portfolio company has no BDR or SDR program, we'll build it for them. So we'll hire, train, ramp those individuals, keep them in our office for about 6 to 9 months before putting them back to headquarters. So really hands-on role that we take as a VC firm. And what's cool about my job is I get to see across B2B, across SaaS, how all these teams are being onboarded and trained, and what's working really well and what's not working really well. So super excited to be here. Andrew, we like have him come in to talk about this stuff at OpenView all the time. So love being here with him tonight and to be able to listen to this.
So here's how this is going to work. We want to make sure you guys get the most out of this next, 45 minutes or so that we have to share our experiences with you guys. So we just want to get right into the things that are on your mind, and we'll talk to you about those. I just want to, CeCe and I want to reserve the right that if the question feels like it might be more useful a little bit further down the road in the conversation, we might table it for a little bit. But we'll throw it right out there, like what's on your minds relative to the challenge of scaling sales behavior? What do you guys want to know?
You're out here for a reason, yeah.
So when you onboard a new salesperson, is it more important for them to learn the customer market first?
So the question is, when you're onboarding somebody, is it more important for them to know a product or the customer they're selling to? I look at it this way. I look at it as this notion of baseline viability, right? What do they need to know in order to get on the phone and be somewhat productive to the point they're not going to bother the person next to them? So for us, it actually is a blend of what are our customer personas we're selling to? what is the product, and how does inbound marketing function. Like, they have to be conversant in those three things to be baseline viable when they get on the phone. And my company's given me 21 business days, right, or a full month to accomplish that. So then I think about, all right, what can I teach them across those three disciplines that will get them to the point that they can have reasonable conversations in the connect sequence to get somebody to want to talk to them, and then move into qualifying. We do not teach how to demo the product. We don't teach how to close in that first month because they're not going to do that yet. Right? So it really is, how do I get them to a point where they can sit at the desk, get some business moving for us, and others will help them. And then we have some follow-on training that occurs in month 2 and month 3. It's not like, the way it works is that it's 100% for the first month they're in training. And then it's 70% on the job, 30% in training month 2, and it's 85% on the job, 15% in training in month 3. So like they're learning how to demo in month 2, because now they're making calls, they're getting things happening, and demos will start to occur. And then we start to introduce, all right, here's how you actually do the closing sequence. If they get lucky and somebody's really interested, somebody else will close the deal for them. Like we've got a nice sort of team selling environment that we've tried to cultivate, and that's sort of how we've tackled it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The follow-up to that is HubSpot, personas and whatnot, that's your bag.
Sure.
I get that. Learn the product or learn the industry. You learn the product, but if you don't know the value of the product to who you're selling to.
Sure.
Yeah, so what you're saying, I think, is a blend of the two. Right?
Yeah,
is
like,
that what you're saying?
I look at it
it's
as
a blend of the two.
they need to learn the language, right? What is the language of who we're selling to? Because that ultimately selling is a conversation game, right? So they need to learn the language, and how do they internalize the things they need to talk about in a salient way to the prospects they deal with, which means they need to have some industry knowledge. Perhaps they bring some with them. If they don't, I need to figure out a way to provide it. They need to understand the product and what the value props is associated with that. They need to understand the conversational elements they're gonna face. Like, how do these conversations unfold?
Yeah, I think to dig a little bit deeper on your question, it's like how much information is too much information for someone in their first week on the job? Because in that first week, you're meeting new people, you're trying to learn a new product, a new industry. There's so much information coming at you that at some point you just like hit your capacity and you stop learning. Then there's the other side of training where it's like go sit next to Andrew, he's going to teach you everything you need to know, and there's really nothing there. So HubSpot does an amazing job of finding that middle ground and knowing what that baseline viability is, that slice of everything that you need to know in order to get in the role and do the first piece of your job.
That's time sequence.
Totally. And how we do it at OpenView is we take all of those elements similar to what they are doing, and we put them together in one we call boot camp. And they have 21 days. Sometimes companies at the expansion stage, when you're earlier on, it's brute force. Like you need that person, they're asking to see like now, right? You wanted to hire them yesterday. That's just, we all know how that goes. So we condense that into a 1 to 2 week boot camp where they're on the phone the first Friday of that boot camp. And it's one day is product and the company. One day is personas and the industry. One day is outbound prospecting, training, like how do you even pick up the phone to call someone? And then it's let's put this into action. And we do some role playing on day 4 and day 5. Like we have a conference room, everyone's sitting in the room, you're on the speakerphone, and everyone's going around. And even as a trainer, I'll get on the phone, real calls, with that C-list leads. And you know what? It's the worst call you're ever going to make, and that's the goal. We want them to like mess up royally while we're in the space with them. And I'll get on the call, and I've been doing these trainings. I've been with OpenView for 2.5 years. But I still make mistakes. And the point is, in that training, you're not going to get them to a point where they're that perfect rep that's going to go crush it for you and close deals, month 1. That's just not reality. So what's the best that you can make them so that they can go learn the rest? And hopefully you have the resources at some point to build out that ongoing training.
There's a thing about time, like how much time do you want to invest?
Yes.
Like we made the decision that a full month was the right level of investment because somebody coming into our business as an example, like they need to be fluent in content marketing, optimization strategy, conversion path strategy, personas, social marketing, email marketing, marketing automation, analytics. Like they need to be conversant in all of that. I couldn't get them there in a week. But if I had a product that I could, it wouldn't be that long. Like I'm looking for what is the shortest period of time possible to get them to baseline viability. They can sit in the seat and actually make a contribution. And for us, it ended up being a full month. Couldn't do it in anything shorter. So what else is on your minds? I know there's a question handed back to.
Andrew, I'm curious for both of you, what's the criteria that you use to assess when someone's ready for prime time? Is it subjective, objective? Do you have different criteria at HubSpot than you have at OpenView?
Just force them into the role. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what we do. Kind of.
No, I just tweeted it out.
Yeah. We just say do it. I think because what we're doing, there are assessments that happen along the way. And we are at a point now where we're building out that training program a little bit further and figuring out what do those assessments look like across each of those sections that I talked about. So what are you assessing for in terms of their persona knowledge, their outbound prospecting knowledge, their vertical knowledge? But basically, it's that round robin dialing session. We get them on the phone, and then it's coupled with coaching right after and one-on-one sessions where we say, okay, next week you need to focus on this. But really, like, I was joking, but kind of serious. We just do the training, hope for the best, and we're really hands-on with that management after and doing those call shadowing sessions together.
So we've taken a little bit of a different, I would say a more scientific approach to this. We have a scorecard, and the scorecard has a couple of different components, and it's a document that lives in Google Docs, and it moves through training, and then it goes to the manager. And it looks at overall participation in training. That's one of the sort of overall scorecards, and there's things like their participation, their engagement, all that jazz. We put a score on that. But then we also have some certifications. They have to do a project with HubSpot. It works with our product, which is they have to feel the pain of a marketer. So we give them a portal in HubSpot. They have to create a business, and they have to go market it. They have to get it to rank on the first page of Google for at least 10 keywords. They have to tweet 30 times about it. They have to do stuff on Facebook. They have to do all these things to empathize with what a marketer goes through, because they're evangelizing this change in marketing. So we want them to feel it. And believe me, they do, because they walk, like a week after training is underway, they're like, holy crap, how am I ever going to get myself to rank on the first page of Google for this stuff? And all of a sudden they start to realize how optimization works. And they're going to start writing tweets and blogging, and they'll do all that crap. And like they go, this is hard. So we judge them on the project. No, I know. So, they have to make a project presentation at the end of that 21 business days. So there is a panel, and it's me and some other executives, and they have to go stand in front of us and present their project and illustrate what they've learned and how they're going to apply it to the job. And it's basically like a what do you call it, like an American Idol type deal, like thumbs up, thumbs down kind of deal. Oh, absolutely, yeah, they are definitely in the marketer's shoes when you feel the pain of the marketer. And then they also like research, prospect, and connect, right? That's the sequence of researching your lead, doing your voicemail, email sequence, and trying to make that connect happen. We use a tool called Commercial Tribe to do a connect certification. They actually have a bunch of different leads. They have to research, they upload them, they record videos of themselves as if they were leaving voicemail messages, and we're able to see their creativity. We do a scorecard on that, and then they do a series of role plays in our qualifying process, and they get a scorecard on that. The whole thing aggregate rolls up to the score for them coming out of training. And we use that to tag it back to the recruiter and to the manager that hired them. And we will fire coming out of training. Training is an extension of the interview process. So they don't know that necessarily. They just know that there's going to be a Top Gun winner who's the best one in training, and the MVP who's going to get voted on by the class. Now, if you're smart, you go, if they're evaluating a Top Gun, well, there might be a bottom gun, right? And those we typically wash out. Doesn't happen a lot, but there's definitely been, I would say over the past year, maybe 4 or 5 people that we've pulled the plug on 30 days in because they just did not pan out. So we're pretty methodical.
That's great.
Andrew, question for you, just kind of to follow on to that. At what point did you create that Top Gun and then say, this is what the scoring looks
So
like?
the scoring started very early. Like I started doing that the 3rd month in that I was doing this whole thing.
Yeah,
We didn't quite get to the awards until it started becoming a larger group.
right.
We were hiring 3 or 4 people a month. It was just kind of like, here's the scorecards. They knew the feedback was there. But still, it was a certain element where they knew that there were hurdles they had to meet. And if they didn't, then there were going to be consequences associated with that, or rewards associated with
I think the lesson though, and the thing that you mentioned, and the thing that we preach a lot is when it comes to hiring, especially for a junior role, hire in groups of 2s and 3s. Don't hire just one person and put them through training. One, because huge waste of resources on your time. 2, like who knows at the end of the week, the month, the ramp time, whatever you've associated with that, if they're going to work out. So your safer bet is to hire in groups of 2s and 3s, and you'll, it's a little bit of more money up front, but it'll work out.
Yeah, like if you're like, I'm going to hire my first SDR.
Hire 2, 3,
Two or
yeah.
three.
Okay. So, and actually tying on to what CeCe just said, so has there been anything, you've been at it a few years now, right? Anything that you've learned that you can apply predictably to who you bring in to that point of hire 2 or 3, SDRs, right? Is there anything predictably you've learned about how to apply that to the positions?
Yeah,
Or-
it's interesting. We've tried a couple of those predictive tools, right? We tried
Sure, there's a number of them.
we've tried predictive Profiles International. We've tried those, and what's interesting is because we've been doing the scoring for so long, we can look at our predictions coming out of training compared to those tools, and those tools are really no better than random for us. Like when we look at the actual regression, it might have been a handful of push pins thrown against the wall, and our deviation from that was we had basically a 95% accuracy rate predicting coming out of training because we're watching them for a full month.
Right.
But when we apply that backwards, we're really looking for a couple of key things. What we really landed on was this notion of like industriousness and grit. Like, do they have that ability to stick to something and continue to work at it in a methodical and iterative way? Are they intellectually curious? Are they curious people? And are they organized? If we can find people with those 3 things, we can teach them how to sell. Now, we're certainly looking for, are they articulate? Do they have a certain amount of brevity in the way they talk about their points? Are they crisp in the way they communicate? Those are kind of baseline stuff. But in my mind, the thing that's really come to the fore, those 3 things that we found to really be the true hallmarks of people that excel at HubSpot. This other notion of like kind of, can you put your ego aside? We look for people, we call it coachability, but can they put their ego aside? It's funny, like the people that have been actually the most successful with us, they'd actually tell me that in training. They're like, listen, I know a lot about this stuff, I've sold for a while, but I'm going to take all that, I'm going to stick it over here, and I'm going to forget about it, I'm going to learn your way. Then I'll put my stuff on top of it. One guy stands out in my mind, G2 Matani, he's now our managing director of our European operations. He started as a sales guy 5 years ago. He's freaking brilliant, right? Does a fantastic job, but he has no ego. And that works for us, right? That sort of humility, that's why it's part of our culture code. We look for people that are like that.
I think it's really good though to have like 3 things that you're always looking for whenever you're hiring for sales. We have 3 too, and we hit on 2 of them. For us, it's coachability, genuine curiosity, or that genuine intellectual curiosity. And the third one that we look for is a track record of winning. And that doesn't have to be in a sales job, especially if you're hiring a more junior person. It could be a track record of winning, cliche is on the field, but I think there's academics in the classroom. I'm a theater person, so like getting the right parts. Like if you know what that feeling is like of winning in some aspect of your life, you know what you want to strive for, you know how good it feels, and it's something that you want to work toward in your job. So those are the 3 things, but highly recommended for everyone to go back and think about the people that you might have on your team right now. What are some of the traits that they share that make them successful, and then always be looking for those, because I think that really helps.
Totally. It's an excellent point. And it brings me to one other thing, we'll get to your question on the whole scorecarding thing that's really been effective about that is because we've been doing it for a while now, we have enough data that we can start looking back at the sales managers and are they actually looking for the right stuff and finding the right people? Because sometimes that's part of the problem is they can't eyeball the right talent. They're making the wrong choices. Are the recruiters sourcing the right kinds of folks? And you can start to see, because you're being really deliberate in training of evaluating whether or not they made the right choice. Because let's face it, hiring isn't an exact science. It's never going to be perfect. All you're trying to do is mitigate your risk of making the wrong decision. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. The question is, can you reduce the amount of mistakes that you make? Because they're expensive. And if you do make a mistake, recognize it early and cut them loose. So before we actually started cutting loose out of training, we realized in some analysis we were sitting on people that wouldn't succeed for like 8 months. And we knew it. Like, we knew it coming like out of training. I would say, this guy's not going to cut it. And they're like, no, I think we can make it work. Because the sales manager's invested in this person, thinks they can make him successful. We go 8 months down the road and they didn't succeed. So what happened? All those leads are burned, right? All of the productivity they should have produced that hasn't happened. So you have all that opportunity cost is baked into that whole thing, and revenue never happened. You should have cut them loose in 30 days or 45 days. So about 2 years ago, we got much more disciplined on that and started doing that. And what it did is it raised the bar on the managers. They made less mistakes because they didn't want that happening on the other end of it. What else?
You had a question?
Yeah, question is, what do you know about salespeople on day one? How did you learn it? And what do you do for reinforcement of the behavior that you want on an ongoing basis?
What do you mean salesperson on day one? What do you mean?
So somebody walks in the door, what do you know about them in terms of their selling behavior or selling intelligence, their ability? Anything at all?
In terms, I want
Have you done any kind of an assessment?
Okay, got it. So the first day that they come and are in the team,
Sure,
that they're on your team.
There's a reason you've hired them. What mechanisms are you using to make that determination?
That's a good question. I think a lot of the people that we're hiring for, so I'm going to probably toss this over to you, are right out of school. That's the
Right.
profile, especially when we're hiring on that BDR and SDR front. That's the profile of the people that we're looking for. So we don't know anything about their sales history or their sales methodology.
Right.
But I know that if they've gone through our screening process, that they're going to be genuinely curious, coachable, and that they're going to have some track record of winning. So that's what I know. Those are like the assumptions I have and what I know coming into the first day. But I'd love to hear from your standpoint if you have someone who's a little bit more
Sure.
experienced.
So for our approach to it, they have to go through a series of hurdles to help us get some insight into where their game's at.
Right.
So there's a recruiter phone screen right off the gate to figure out, is this person even worth talking to? Assuming that happens, they go get a phone screen from a manager who's just starting to understand, are they even viable? Like, do they have some sales game? Can they, do the kinds of things we need them to do? They start testing for a lot of these core things we're looking at. Assuming that works, they're going to come in, actually, apologize. Next thing they're going to do is a role play. So the recruiter knows how to act like a customer or prospect would act. And they're going to behave as that prospect. They're going to be given sort of what the scenario is in advance, and the role play is going to occur, and the role play is recorded. And it gets sent to all of the interviewing managers. So they can kind of hear the game of this person, like how articulate are they, how effective are they at uncovering the different needs that this person is sort of like teeing up for them and exploring those things. How good are they at really digging in and understanding what's going on. That role play is then used in the interview process to drive some coaching. And then certain sales managers who are involved in the interview process are deliberately going to do coaching scenarios. They're going to say, all right, so listen to the role play. Let's do a little bit of that right now. I'm going to be the prospect, you be the sales rep. Let's go. And they'll start doing that. And they'll say, all right, so given the way you're doing that, we handle that a little differently. And they'll provide some coaching on that. And they want to see, can they adjust their behavior on the fly? Because that's what we're looking for, is that adaptability element. You can start to see the humility come out there. You can start to see their curiosity. We have others that are really dialed into asking questions. Like, one of the things I like to do with interview candidates when I'm coming in later in the game, so let's say I'm interviewing like 4th or 5th in the sequence, I'll walk in, I'll say, all right, so Marty, you've met with a bunch of people so far, had a bunch of conversations. I'm curious, like, given all the things you talked about, what's on your mind? What do you want to know? Ask me anything and I'll answer it, right? And now all of a sudden, like, they're on the hot seat and they're like, oh shit, this is what I expected. And they might say, well, geez, I'm really curious. I've learned a lot about this coaching aspect, and tell me more about how you guys coach at HubSpot. And I'll flip it right back and go, okay, well, you've been coached a few times. Tell me about it. What'd you see? Right? And now it's like, are they paying attention? And I try to use that as a way to really get underneath what are they like and can they hang in our environment. And the people that are like later on in the sequence do that type of stuff. So when the interview is done, we have a pretty good idea. And then the director will get involved as well. Usually the sales directors grill them hard, like, do you really want to be here? Like, all that kind of stuff. We vet them pretty hard. Like, we don't let them in easy. So we have a pretty good idea who's coming in. And like I said, we have a pretty good hit rate. On our scores, the majority we bring through are like 3s. We have a 4-point scale. 1 is you're not lasting, you're done. 2 is like 90-day plan, you should be okay, but we're not sure. 3 is you'll be fine with some coaching. 4, you'll be a rock star. And I would say the bell curve, like the majority were 3s, reasonable amount of 4s, a few 2s, occasional 1s, which is what we would expect to see. Does that help?
It does. And the next question was about reinforcement. What do you do about reinforcing the behavior that you're looking to have come to the forefront and remain?
Would you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so in terms of reinforcing behavior, we're pretty regimented in kind of the daily rhythm that a team follows, particularly from a management standpoint. So those reinforcing behaviors don't just happen, they happen on the fly, on the phone, through feedback and coaching, but we're more regimented than that. So every Monday, you're having a team kickoff where you're reinforcing a theme for the week and a focal point for the week. Wednesdays for us, always one-on-ones, and Fridays are retrospective. You guys are familiar with Scrum methodology, some of you here. We utilize Scrum to plan out for all our teams in the labs. We actually take that methodology back to the SDR teams, Lesio, as well. So they're going back retrospecting on their sprint for the week, kind of what went well, areas for improvement, and we use those areas for improvement as the focal points for the following week. So in terms of kind of that reinforcement, it's something that they are always thinking about, especially that theme for the week. That's really my
So for us, we've worked really hard to make sure that what we're training lines up really tightly with how the sale actually works. Because what tends to happen in organizations that have, training organizations, and I've run into this in companies I've worked for, like, you go through training, everything else, and you go sit down in the sales floor, and the sales guy leans over and goes, the shit they told you training, that's not how we sell. It goes this way. Yeah. We've worked really hard to make sure that's not how this happens. Like, they get trained on what they're really going to do. So it's actually created a very consistent message across all the sales teams. So the sales managers are dialed in, and they're the ones that do the reinforcement of the concepts that we've introduced, because we're tightly aligned with what they actually want to have happen on the sales floor. And that's how we solve for them.
So along that same line, I think, at least from my company, I know a lot of companies not similar, 2 to 20 million space, they aren't quite sure why the deal happened. And so I'm guessing you went through a period of that at HubSpot. I'm guessing you see that all the time. So how does that, when you're still trying to understand why is this business keep closing from this direct channel, or why is this individual closing most business, how do you map that back to the training and development? It's not, and also it doesn't just go towards specifically onboarding and prepping somebody to get in that role. It actually goes more to the ongoing training, because you need to be able to identify what works and what doesn't, and what do we need to train for. So can you just speak a little bit the differences that you've seen at HubSpot from when you were first starting to now in the 16 years?
It's interesting. It's been a long time.
You guys know what you're selling, you know how to do it now, right?
Yeah, but I mean, in the beginning, when I first joined, as the trainer, I was on calls all the time. Like, that was really the deal, is, the way it kind of worked was I would train them on inbound marketing the product for the first 2 weeks, and then the second 2 weeks, I would teach them the sales process, but it was learn and do. It's like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to research your leads. Here's, 50 C leads. I want you to go research 10 tonight, because we're going to call them tomorrow. I'm going to teach you tomorrow, here's how we're going to use the voicemail email sequence to try and get some engagement. We're going to do that afternoon. They're going to go do it. And then they might get a bite. So great, now we're going to do the actual connect call when somebody picks up and wants to talk to you. You're going to call me, you're going to leave messages on my voicemail, I'm going to rate them, then you're going to go and you're going to start doing that. And it was like this learn and do sequence. And I'd start, like, if they managed to book somebody who wanted a qualifying call, we call it an IMA, or an inbound marketing assessment, I would run it on their behalf. They're not ready yet, so I'm like, I'm going to run it, and then you're going to run the next one. So I was doing it a lot, and then I was spending time with the top sellers, observing how they were doing it, and trying to really bake that whole thing together and figure out how is this actually working, and how do I translate it into a repeatable system as it was evolving. Because our product that we sell now was not what we were selling 6.5 years ago. It was a lot of that at that stage, of just back and forth and constantly reinventing the sales process, and more importantly, the sales conversations as they were evolving by being out in the floor and actually doing it. with the people that were learning it as well as the people that were learning it. So just quick temperature check. Is this useful for you guys so far?
Yes.
Cool.
Could you tell us a little more about your role playing?
That's really personal. I don't know my safe word next.
You know, you bring people in and you're talking to them, and it's like, all right, we have to like sell, and like, how does that, like, you have a certain number of people, you probably have like a certain, you know, show this next, show this next. How does that work?
Do you mean during the interview process or the training
Just the
process?
training process, like, you say role playing is part of training,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
so-
a question we'll direct you.
It's a really good question. So the way that we do it is this: a lot of the companies that we're working with are really focused on that enterprise segment. So we train them on a top-down approach. So are you guys familiar with Jeff Hoffman, Why You Now, Basho Strategies? Okay. So Jeff Hoffman, he created the Why You Now email. So going up to that really high-ranking executive within a business, and then using something specific about them as your reason for reaching out, tying it back to the value prop of your business, and then asking for a referral to the right person. So we spend a lot of time during the trainings writing out those emails, practicing doing that research, researching the lead, crafting those emails. And the beautiful thing about those emails is they translate really well into scripts and as well as voicemails. So the first cut at role playing is calling into the C-suite. So, and I always turn my back. That's a hot tip to everyone. Turn your back during role playing, because when you're on the phone, you can't see that person's face or their reactions. So I'll turn my back to them, and I'm a theater major. I mentioned that. I'm great at voices. So they'll call into me and they'll use that Why You Know script in order to get a referral to the right person. From there, then we have to think about, okay, what are the qualification questions that you need once you get the referral to the right person in order to pass them up to your sales rep. So we'll build that out together as part of the training, and then we walk through the sequence and the role playing that way. So literally, we're building it, and then we're doing it, and then we're building it, and we're doing it. And that's how we get them bought into the process and into the sequence, and get them to actually be effective.
Have any of you guys heard about this Basho sequence? We do it as well. It's been highly effective for us the entire time. It works. It's a very effective process for exactly what you're talking about. Like the way you think about the email sets up what you're going to do in the voicemail.
Yeah.
So many voicemails are canned. Like I get them all the time. It's like, hi Andrew, this is so-and-so from such and such a company. We do X, Y, and Z. We thought you'd be a great fit for our learning development, blah, blah, blah.
You get that far?
Well, no. I mean, the beautiful thing is voicemail comes into my email, so I click on it and I always listen. And some of them I save and use them as bad examples in my training. So be careful about that.
Yeah.
You just might unwittingly served up in that. But the Basho forces you to not think that way and think about the individual, what matters to them.
Totally. And I think the thing that I hear a lot during trainings, especially when we're working with reps, is like, you're never going to get someone on the first time you reach out to them. So if it takes 8 to 12 touches to get someone live on the phone, what do I say come touch 7 when I feel like I've used up everything about my business in the front end? But the Basho strategy and that why you now approach forces you to find something new every time.
Do you do the breakup in that too?
We do the breakup email at the end,
You
yeah.
guys know what that is?
Love the
Breakup email is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
So if you do the Basho thing, essentially what's happening is you're trying to elevate the value for each subsequent email.
Mm-hmm.
So like for us, the way we do that is we can see, we have the good fortune in the business where we can see where your marketing's gone wrong, right? We can see where your SEO is off. We can see where your conversion paths might be weak. We can see where your social strategy might not be following best practices. So we'll open up the message and it's something like, hey, this is Andrew Quinn. I was actually doing some searching and I actually stumbled across your website and we help companies fix X, Y, and Z. And I noticed this is actually off. And you could fix it if you just did this and this. I'd be happy to give you a little bit more about how that would actually fix. If you want me to tell you how to do that, that's great. I'd be happy to do it. Call me back, whatever it is. They never call back, but then we'll raise the bar on the next one and give more detail. Here's how you should fix this. You're actually losing traffic because of X, Y, and Z. And you keep raising the bar, and then you go, it seems like this isn't a priority to fix these problems. Website's probably not an issue for generating leads for you, so you're not going to hear from me again. Great knowing you. If you're interested, reach out, but other than that, you're not going to hear from me again. It's amazing how many people in the breakup go, wait, no, actually, like, what is this whole thing?
I think like a really important point though on the breakup email, it's only effective if you can do something like that.
Yes.
Did the
have to
alligator
build
eat
the
you?
value.
Like, no, that's not a breakup email, and that's one I used to get all the time. Like, were you eaten by an alligator? Or like, I used to get the dumbest shit like that. Did you guys, am I the only one who got those?
Yeah, I've done the alligator.
I got the alligator one, like that's not objectifying aliens. Like someone sent me a picture once and they were like, is this you? And it's like someone like a crime scene. Like there are weird things that happen and that doesn't work. It has to be value driven in order for that breakup email to actually be effective. Yes.
How do you effectively evaluate candidates through the role play of your hiring process? So the challenge for us is we have a whole bunch of candidates.
Yeah.
We've got what I think is a great role play of testing, like not only how they can kind of research and prep for a call, but also what they would do in the actual role. And we've had terrible results. And so I can't figure out if it's our process, if the candidates aren't good, if we're not evaluating them properly.
So one of the things that we do, and you guys I know do a role play as part of the interview process, we don't do, especially for a junior, is it for junior people or for more senior
It's
people?
more senior people, so like account executive, profile, I don't know, 3 to 7 years
Yeah.
sales experience, something of the sort.
Then I'll let Andrew take that.
This is going to sound a little bit cheeky, but do you know what you're looking for? Like, do you genuinely, because if you know what you're looking for, is the role play structured to give you what you're looking for?
We think so. So we did very similar to you. Here are we have 4 core characteristics that we think we really need you to do. And the role plays that we structured have been around, like, this is what you're going to do in the actual job. If you can't do this well, you're going to struggle. But again, we've had poor results, so I can't tell if the candidates are bad, if our process is bad, or if our evaluation
The question
is
I
bad.
would ask is like, is it possible for them to even do well in this without knowing what your business is and all? Like, is it possible for somebody to do it well? Or is it, I need them to demonstrate the ability to move into doing it well? Like the raw material is there for me to develop them into doing that thing well. Because I mean, we have people who role play for HubSpot, and I mean, you listen to the role play, they're like, I can't believe I got hired. But we can see the raw material, like we know what we're looking for in the raw material, and if you see that, then we'll take that and try to turn it in to somebody that can be successful in our environment. And we've had success with people like, and one guy that really stands out, he was a Harvard MBA, never sold before, but man, he just fit what we had. He did terrible in the role play, but he just kind of fit, like he had the raw material. And the kid was like 200% of quota every single month for the 2 years that he worked for us before he went out and did his own startup. Like you just got to know what you're looking for and be able to recognize it, even though they might not ace the role play. But you see the raw materials to be able to get them to turn into what you need them to be, and if they're coachable, and if they have that ability to learn, they're curious and they want to develop. So you get guys that like and women that like, I'll put it this way, there's 2 types of people I see in sales in general that come in. There are those that want to prove they're already good, and those generally do not pan out well, right? Because they just want to show up and prove that they're awesome. And then there are those that like, they know how to learn, right? And they understand how to actually incrementally get better. And they're coming to your organization because they want to get better at whatever it is. They want to get better at making more money. They want to get better in some other discipline. Like, do they have that gene to get better as opposed to prove I already know how to do it? Because we've hired the I already know how to do it guys, and
I also think one thing you might want to consider doing is switching up that role play. Maybe it doesn't, and it's just like a good A/B test for yourself. Have them pitch you on what they're selling currently. One thing that we do for super junior people is come in and present. You have 15 minutes, present on anything you want. And I've had people come in and say like, I love skiing. I'm going to teach you all about skiing. And the first thing I say to them before they start is like, I hate skiing. Tell me why I should love it. And like we, put it back on them to do that education piece. And it's really just to check the boxes. Are they articulate? Are they able to weave a story, put it together? Are they comfortable getting in front of the room, answering questions on their feet? It's more looking for those building blocks of what makes someone successful in the role versus like, are they going to come crush it with our pitch? Because I don't know how early you guys are. Like maybe you guys haven't Yeah.
So we took both of those, which is funny because I've been through the HubSpot hiring process too, and so and I got a job offer. Good for you. So we kind of did the like, hey, learn our product a bit. Like, let's see if you can have a core understanding. Let's see if you can learn based off the resources that we gave you. And then the second part is pitch and demo whatever you want.
Totally.
And for some reason, that's not working. I'll follow up with you guys afterwards because that might just be like
There's a question in the back that keeps coming. I see you back there.
So my question is, you talked a lot about the process and understanding what the technology is that you're selling, but how do you get the ethos of the company into their vernacular? How do you get it so that, you know, you're talking to a marketer and they're just not ready to purchase right now, but you want to make sure that you're not burning that bridge because there's still going to be a prospect somewhere down the road. So you've still sort of provided some sort of advisory service or been some sort of help, but not burning that bridge so that there's an ethos of the company that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it really starts with that project where they have to feel the pain of a marketer. Like, they get it. When they come through that thing, like, it's putting them through the ringer. It's hard. Like, there's some metrics in there that are tough to reach. The hardest one is, like, you gotta get 4 inbound links. Like, that's tough, right? And, you know, the other issue is, like, Halligan might show up. Like, senior execs show up to these things as they're presenting. So, like, the bar is high. So they have to produce. So they feel, because that's the same thing a marketer goes to. They got to go to their CEO and present their results. So we've tried to really mirror what a marketer goes through. So they feel it. So when they're talking to these people, they empathize with them. They get where they're coming from. And we also very much trade on education. Like, our sale is such that we have to evangelize to a bit. Like, we have to sell this inbound marketing dream. So we're educating on that. If they're not ready yet, like, we're clear about that. And the way that our commission plan works, there's really aggressive clawbacks in it because, as you guys know, like, churn is the death knell of the SaaS business. So they can't sell bad fit deals. We pull the commission away if that customer doesn't stick for a year, right? So we pay them up front, but they could lose that money. So they basically have a loan for a window of time if the customer doesn't stick.
1 year?
Clawback's 6 months, but there's some other issues that happen relative to promotion path, like to kick the next level. They have to have churn under a certain amount, and that has compensation elements in it. So, like, what's really cool about it is on the sale, and they don't say this every call, but if you get somebody who's reluctant, they'll say, listen, you need to understand something. I don't get paid to sign you up. That's not how this works. I get paid for you to be in that software and successful with it over time. So I'm looking at you just as critically as you're looking at me, and if I don't think this is going to work, I'm going to tell you. So if you don't feel it's the right thing, that's good for both of us. And so we don't really burn those bridges. And believe me, like, we are very prominent in, like, the social sphere. So if we do that, it gets tweeted very quickly. We talk about that too. Like, you need to understand, if you piss somebody off, it's going to get tweeted about, it's going to get posted about, it's going to show up places, and you want that attached to your name. So we kind of bake that in from the beginning, and it's just part of the DNA of the business.
A lot of what you're talking about is onboarding. What do your sales managers do? Do they do role playing? Do they do those weekly things? Because it sounds like you two guys are like, okay, here's the stuff. It sounds like the sales
As much-
excuse me, I might be I don't understand, might be disillusioned, but it sounds like the sales managers don't have to go do this one.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
absolutely.
no.
All right, so-
There's
so
just
tell
as
me-
much
tell me what-
training for them in order to be successful managers as there is for someone coming into the role. And there, at OpenView, we're building out these teams sometimes for 6 to 9 months. Great. Managers still have to VP of sales. Maybe that's the only manager type role. They're still involved in every Friday update call. Like, every Friday retrospective, they have to be involved in it. If we're just going in to train, build out a team, develop the right process, we're training the manager on how to run that regimented week to make sure that daily.
Startup, you expect that VP to do role plays and tactical.
Yeah, and it's tough, but you have to set the precedent that is, your people are important and your process is important. And if you can't do that, then maybe you shouldn't have.
Here's one of the things we do, then I want to get to your question. You've had your hand up a couple of times, so you're next. But there's something else on that, which is sales managers, yes, they do a lot of role play, but actually we do a lot of this thing we call film review. Because they're all inside sales, we record a lot of calls. and we use those as coaching tools. And what's cool about it is because we're giving all these tips and insights, we'll tee it up right up front. Hey, listen, I'm going to record this call because we're going to cover a lot of things that are going to be useful for you and the changes you might want to make in your online marketing efforts. So I want to send this to you when we're done, right? So you can have an iteration of that. You can, review the tips that I'm giving you and some of the insights that I'm giving you. We'll do that on demos and all that stuff. So, and sometimes like, no problem, whatever it is. But that's how we sort of tee up that I'm recording. Because obviously on the law side of things, you've got to announce ahead of time that, hey, I'm recording. So, we've set this up in a way that they want to be willing participants in that. But then what we'll do is we'll do call reviews and we'll sit down. And some of them, like we might listen to 15 minutes of the call and the manager will debrief what's going on. There's others, like when I'm coaching reps, I literally won't get through more than like 2.5 minutes because arguably all of the mistakes they're making, they keep repeating every 2.5 to 5 minutes, over and over and over again across the entire 45 minutes. So, you can see it all in a snippet of like 2.5 to 5. And it's really digging into why did they react the way they reacted? What was the decision they made in the moment when that customer said that and you decided to say this? Why did you decide that? What was going through your mind at that moment? What are other avenues you could take? And really getting them to think about, tactically, the decisions they're making as the conversations are unfolding. Once they starts to dawn on them, geez, I am making decisions. I'm not just rotely like repeating this stuff. It really starts to generate their development. Now, in the back.
Thanks. You actually, two aspects of my question. You answered the one. So you're talking about training for inside sales, bringing people through the SDR chain. My question was more around building a sales force where it's a higher ticket sale, and you're doing some face-to-face. There's even outside sales, quote unquote, right, still has a huge inside component, right? So it's not like it was 20 years ago. But so for those kind of reps, what do you guys think of what sales methodologies do you like? Like when I came up in the business, right, it was Miller Hyman, strategic selling, spin selling.
Now
right?
Challengers.
Challenger's different, right? But like Challenger's more like being provocative and understanding what that's about, right? I'm talking about something like Rick Page, Hope is not a strategy. Really, basically decomposing the complex sale, right? And thinking about how do you do a complex. You've got an average sales cycle of 9 months, average ticket of 400, right? So, do you have a preference for about like a methodology that you like, that you don't like in that world? That's all.
I personally am a big spin selling guy because I believe that the art of asking effective questions is probably the single most important skill for a salesperson. But where spin falls down is it doesn't really get into what do you do with the answers once you got them. Right? Whereas Challenger kind of deals with that. Like, how do you actually deal with the insights, the answers, and create that aha moment that gets them to realize that I can spend money this way? Sandler really deals with the pain stuff. So personally, I'm a fan of like, what is it you're actually trying to sell and which components of those different methodologies fit together to create your unique approach in the market. It's like we use elements of Sandler, we use elements of Challenger, we use elements of Spin to create our own methodology that's worked for us.
We do the same thing. So for us, it's a bit of Sandler, a bit of Basho strategies, Basho strategies, that Jeff Hoffman stuff, and then a bit of Challenger.
Gotcha.
Just depending on the role and the person. But we've blended that together into a process and into a methodology, if you will, that works for us.
It's really sensible, by the way.
Yeah.
I love what you both said. Just going to make a comment about Challenger. I just want to hear what you guys think about it. So I was always one of the Challenger sales reps. Right? I was always the provocative guy, asked the tough question. I got amazing results. I kind of figured out that, especially when you're doing like a change deal, right, when you're really being transformational. But it was really an incomplete model of Challenger sale, right? And they actually just came out with a book called The Challenger Customer. By the way, if you do a LinkedIn search on the 4 authors, not one of them was ever a bad-carrying salesperson. I'm just going to point that out. I'm a fan, by the way. I'm a fan. But they've just discovered that it's a complex sale. There's all these different kind of stakeholders with different personalities, different attributes, personas, whatever you want to think about them. And it was just really interesting to me to see how they've evolved their thinking. Because I think Challenger was right in the sense that it identified it's really highly effective to challenge the status quo. Because software and technology is often changing.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and it's part of usually a change strategy.
What's interesting, so, and I don't want to, this is going to sound, I guess, a little braggartly. I don't intend it that way. We were members in the CEG, right, Corporate Executive Group and the Sales Roundtable, which is where the Challenger comes from. Like they were heavily involved in development, all that stuff, and we did some of the diagnostics associated with that. And what was interesting is, like, we were right at the same edge they were. Like we were really getting no value out of that because we're pushing so hard on that as it is, and the whole provocative sale, the educational sale, the trying to get the person to like, turn 90 degrees and realize the answer's behind them type of thing. That like a lot of those methodologies for us anyway are sort of, they're not where the world really is. And I think Brian and Dharmesh have been really, I think, very forward thinking in where the world is and where it's going, like the whole Wayne Gretzky skate to where the puck's going to be. Like they truly think that way. And Brian's really thinking that way about the art of selling and how do we evolve this profession to match the way people actually buy, given the information they have access to. Like no matter what, the buyer outstrips you every single day in what they can access and understand beyond your own ability. Like they just have it. So how do I provide an insight and a value to help them decide that I'm the guy they should buy from? Because ultimately that's the deal is we're not selling anything, we're trying to decide, do you want to buy from me? How can I help you decide that I'm the guy you want to buy from? Right? I mean, that's really what it's come down to. Because I'm trying to sell you, you're going to see right through it. That's kind of my take on it.
I think and again, I'm biased because I love Jeff Hoffman's stuff. He trained me, he's the first sales trainer I ever worked with.
That's great.
But I love his stuff because when you hear him do a training in front of a group or if you're working with him one-on-one, everything he says just comes from a place of honesty and humor, and there's no smoke and mirrors with him. There's no like sense of that false sense of like the salesperson. Yeah, or no manipulation. And I think that just when you hear him talk, everything he says, you're like, yeah, no, that makes complete sense, and you're not just that bobblehead salesperson there. So, highly recommend it.
So how do you train? So you said something interesting. And I'll stop talking now after this question. But you said something interesting about what you look for in reps. Like I've always looked for intellect, curiosity, and I also look for people who like money. That's been my thing. I ask people what kind of car they drive. I'm sorry, like I want to know. Somebody's got an expensive lifestyle. It tells me they're used to making money and they want to keep doing it. But what I found is I tried to turn reps sometimes into that person because they had so many other good attributes. And it's that innate curiosity, intellectuality. And it seems like how do you, and sometimes it's really hard to find in people.
Sure it is.
Like, do you think you can help people become more like that, or you just cut them loose when they don't show that?
Cut them loose. I think it's who they are. Unless some like major thing happens in their life that transforms them to be that way, you're never going to turn them into that. I've never seen it work. Just never seen it work.
Well, I have time for like one or two.
I was just going to say the reality of it is you could probably do a whole nother meetup like this just on interviewing,
Yes,
honestly.
totally.
But the amount of time we spend interviewing versus training, it's like,
Yeah, we've made a lot of mistakes, so I'd be happy to share them.
It wasn't really a question, it was more of a statement.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
At least get something.
Yeah.
Have you found out what these mistakes are based on? Is it because you're hopeful when you see somebody? Is it because they, you didn't allow them to fail enough for you to see why they can't make it through the sales training?
Part of it is not really understanding what you're looking for. Part of it is being sold in the interview. Like that happens, and trying to look through that. We've run into a situation where we've had a few of these, not a bunch, but I look at like there are salespeople that sell the way we've been talking about, right? Like they try to understand the buyer, they're authentic, all that jazz. And then there's this other class, which I would call the charismatic sellers. Like it's the natural born salespeople, like it's in them, like they can sell ice to an Eskimo, like that type of thing. And we have some people that are like that. And they can sell successfully as long as they're genuine and all that jazz. But the challenge is like, you never know if they're going to work out. And we've had those people join and they flame out, tremendously, or they succeed. Like it's binary with those folks. It's either going to work or it's not. But those people that like, they have those attributes, they tend to be able to scale better. Right? So we've ended up staying away from the more charismatic ones because it ends up like just being a roll of the dice as to whether or not it's going to work. We just have a higher likelihood of getting a successful outcome and looking for that like humility, that curiousness, that industriousness, that ability to be sort of organized and methodical.
And I think the biggest thing is that none of those things that you're talking about, those are core principles of a person.
Yes.
They're not things that are external factors. And I think some companies where they fall down or where they get stuck, particularly with hiring, is thinking that they can only hire from in industry. And that, like, yes, in the beginning, maybe it's great to have someone come in who has a book of business, knows people, but as you're trying to think about scaling, one, that's not scalable, and two, those people come in and they ramp really quickly, but then they plateau. People who are coming in who just have those core tenements and maybe don't have that book of business, they're the ones who maybe take a little bit longer to ramp, but once they get there, it's, sky's the limit. So thank you guys all so much. This is awesome.
I want to give another shout out to our really awesome sponsors. If you got a chance to just read up a little bit on Lego, some really amazing sales video technology. Also hired, they're still there, to have some great t-shirts, really, really soft and wonderful t-shirts. So definitely pick one up. But thank you so much. I already have the meetup for next month posted. It's at WeWork. It's going to be at the other location on Melcher Street. But it's going to be a really great conversation on surround selling by a woman by the name of Emmanuel Scala, VP of Sales at Influitive. She's spoken at many other events, and she's just a fabulous speaker and just a really great sales operational mind. And she's going to teach us a little bit about how she thinks about sales and this whole surround concept to leverage referrals and advocacy to advance your sales. And that will be December 8th. So Tuesday, December 8th at the other WeWork location. If you get a chance, please, if you like this content, you like this format, you like this community that we're trying to build, please leave a review on meetup.com and share, not with everyone, just share one person that you trust and you believe would value this type of community and this type of real, actionable, practical sales knowledge that we're dishing out every month. So just thank you so much. Have a happy Thanksgiving holiday, and I'll see you next month.
Mark, can I make one quick plug? If you're interested, David Scott's blog for entrepreneurs, I wrote a very in-depth article on exactly how to set up a training program. Like, it's the soup to nuts exactly how I did it. So if you're interested, I take it you read it. So yeah, it gives you the roadmap to do it.
I'll send it out in the email as well. Oh yeah.
And OpenView, we put out a newsletter every Saturday specifically for B2B SaaS executives, for marketing, sales, talent, and a senior leadership one as well as a general one. Highly recommended, great content.
Yeah, those are both awesome blogs. I've learned so much from David Stock's work and just a lot of sales process, the article that you posted up there, as well as I'm always borrowing stuff from OpenView and putting in newsletters. So definitely sign up for that newsletter. It's really solid content. You get some really great contributors. Actually, Mike Weinberg, I discovered Mike Weinberg through an article you wrote. That was really great stuff. Really smart mind around sales management, if you have any questions around that. So thanks again, everyone. And, feel free to mingle for a little bit. We'll be here. Let's see you next month.
His blog is on David Stock's, his blog is on David Stock's website. Stock. Okay. I got it, I write it down.
Special list of machines on New England Human Resources. Now sort of
So I work actually.
She's at BU.
She's at University. She's the director of